I was born in Mexico, and specifically Mexico City, but my family's from León, which is a town that is, and actually now it's more of a city, has grown about 4 hours north of Mexico City in the state of Guanajuato. I lived there, I think in Mexico, I think we were there for a couple years, and so since I came to the United States when I was about 10, I would say I lived about 6, 8 kind of deal. Years in, actually about 6 years in León, and we lived a couple in Mexico, and then we lived in another town.
I was born in the United States. I grew up in Taiwan from 1979 to 1989, and then my family and I moved to the United States in 1989.
I was born in Medellin, Colombia, Rio Negro. My mom came on a tourist visa, and my dad came on a work visa, and they didn't know each other, and through mutual friends they met, and they ended up getting married here in New York. Then they went back to Colombia. And
I was born in Mexico, in the state of Guerrero, southwest, about 3 hours away from Acapulco. It's a small town called Teloloapan, mostly indigenous. And yeah, I was born there and I grew up there. There is a lot of people from my hometown in Waukegan, Illinois, which is a small town north of Chicago. So, and my father was employed in Waukegan during the 60s and 70s. So my father used to come to Waukegan with a contract with a huge company. And that's how, you know, the immigration started from my hometown.
It actually goes back to my grandparents. My grandfather used to own a textile factory, and he used to come up to Chicago for business. And in one of those trips, he met my grandmother. She's a Chicago Irish, and fell in love. She was about 16 years old, and they went back to Mexico. And down there is where they had about 11 kids. And then in the early 50s, the factory went broke. And by that time, there was this big need for the steel mills in Gary, Indiana. And because my family, through my grandmother, had some experience with Chicago and northern Indiana, my grandfather and 2 of my older uncles moved here and started working in the steel mills. And slowly...
I was born in Taiwan. My parents were visiting when my mom was pregnant. So she gave birth to me here. They were visiting my grandfather and 2 of my uncles, probably mid-70s.
That's where my sister and I were born. My brother had already been born here. And then my sister and I were born there and lived there till I was 9, and then they decided to come back here.
But the new generations during the 70s, late 70s, they decided to stay here. And during the 80s, that's when my brothers came here. Well, they just stay here, came here to stay.
And slowly, from the early 50s till about, I think it was 58, my mom's families, you know, 2 at a time or how many, started moving to northern Indiana, and my mother and my grandmother were the last to move here. Before my mom moved here, she actually had been dating my dad. And even when, after she left here, my father stayed in Mexico. I mean, she came to the United States and my father stayed in Mexico. They corresponded for 7 years. And one day, my mom gets a phone call and says, from my father, says, you know, Gloria, let's get married. And my mother's thinking, okay, you know, let's plan for it. And he's like, no, I'm in the United States, let's get married. He came to get her. And it turns out that my aunt was getting married that Saturday. So she just bought a wedding dress, got married, and their honeymoon was on their way to going back to Mexico.
I think they knew somebody that they went to church with.
I had 2 brothers living here already. They invited me.
My mom had a friend of hers that had actually, she'd done a similar thing, but she'd come back before us. So her friend was already here. And some acquaintances, not anybody really close, but somewhat. I'd say mostly there wasn't really any infrastructure for them when they got here, or any.
I decided to come to the United States just to see what's going on over here, to check out the country.
So we were in Mexico, myself and 4 of my brothers were born in Mexico, and my sister later was born here. And in the early 70s or so, because we came in 76, my grandmother became very ill, and my mother wanted to be here with my grandmother. So they decided they were going to come up and stay until my grandmother got better. Unfortunately, she passed away after about a year. By then, my parents had decided that we were going to stay, you know, because they knew there would be better opportunities for us.
Well, my grandfather got cancer, and my dad is the oldest in the family, so he felt like it was his duty to come here and take care of his father. That's why we moved here.
Mostly economic, and they were concerned at the time. The economy was weak, and it didn't look promising, and still a lot of violence around. It was not abating either. And also education. It's gotten to the point where it's really been like this for a long time, and it still is, where even if you're a good student at school, it doesn't matter. You have to have connections to get into a university, or you have to buy your way in. There's some public institutions, but you still can't get in. Or you get in and you pay the money and you graduate and then you have no job. For my dad's sister, she's single, never married. Pretty set. For her birthday and for Christmas, we send her money. But mostly everybody else is, which is the difficult thing. They ask for money all the time. So when they can help, they send it. Otherwise, just kind of wait around to see who's the next person's going to come up and say, I really need money. So it gets hard. And part of the reason why we try to distance ourselves is because you can't support everybody up there, and they expect that you should be able to.
One of the things that I told my mom when I came here was that I was not going to send her money. That's like, no way, I'm going there. It's like, I'm moving there. I'm not migrating, I'm moving there. Well, I'm not going to go there and make money and come back with it. I'm going to go make money and spend it there.
No, she doesn't really, no, we don't do that. But we do bring things back when we go back and visit.
My father does.
To his family?
To his family, you know, with his brothers, for example. I had an uncle one time who broke his leg and was not able to work, and so he was a little strapped for money. So my father sent him money. I have another uncle who was actually a professor at a university, and unfortunately he would go months without getting paid because there just was no money. So sometimes they would ask my dad for money. So whenever, it was not something necessarily that he did like every month, but normally when the family, there was an emergency, you know, he sent money, you know, somebody needed a car or sickness or something like that.
Since I came when I was 9, I've only gone back twice. And I don't really keep contact, or I don't visit often, and I have a lot of family. I really only have my immediate family here. But we don't keep in contact very much. My mom does with her family somewhat. My dad mostly through letters, and we don't really keep in contact.
I didn't go back to Mexico during that time, during 4 years. I just couldn't go. I didn't have the money, first of all, and I didn't have the, I was not documented, so I couldn't just travel and go back into the country. I couldn't do that without risking either my life or something else, which I didn't want to do at that time. My mom's still living there. My father died about 10 years ago. 12 years ago.
I've only been back twice since I moved to the United States. My mom's side of the family is still all in Taiwan. There will be a few of my aunts, my grandma, my mom's mother, my cousins from my mom's side, they're all there. And friends, no, I moved here when I was young, so didn't keep in touch with any of my classmates then.
To be honest, the first 5 years I lived in the United States, from the time I was 10 to about 15, I hated it here. Every time we go back, I have a fit because I never wanted to come to the United States. I hated it because I felt stupid. I didn't know how to speak English. I dressed differently. I ate differently. I just felt like I hated it because I stood out, and I was just very unhappy. And I remember being angry at my mother for the longest time because I blamed her because it was her family. I was like, it's your fault we're here, and I'm miserable. I have no friends. I used to get beaten up and all this other stuff. But then when I was 15, I had my quinceañera, which is our coming out party, and I went to Mexico because normally before that we stayed maybe a week or two in Mexico. That time I stayed almost the whole summer, and then I realized when I was there I no longer fit there anymore. I had changed. I had become too Americanized. And so then I felt that when I turned 15, I realized that I belonged nowhere. I didn't belong in the United States, I didn't belong in Mexico, and it wasn't actually until I came to college, to Bloomington, that all of a sudden I was in a town where everybody was from somewhere else.
I think at some point in time they used to say they would. The whole idea, we're going to make money and then we're going to go live there and live almost like rich people, I guess. Pretty well off. If you make money here, you go, you spend it there. But I think somewhere along the line they've seen that that's not going to happen. Colombia is really unstable right now. It seems to be doing better. There are some things that are supposedly the government is working towards improving some of the static between different groups, but overall I think the average person's situation is not better off. And because of all the family that we have, again, I think they've come to accept that they won't be able to live there comfortably, seeing perhaps how hard everybody else's life is, not being able to help, the fact that they can't help themselves, our family, so I don't think it's a healthy environment for them. So they've given up on that idea. They know they have to stay here. Plus they want to stay close to us too, to the kids and the grandkids. And
They came here knowing that they were going to stay here for a long time. Not like my father, who stayed here for about a year or 2 years. So they came here certainly with the idea of staying here for at least 10 to 20 years. Now they speak English and they're very, very well acculturated into the culture, so they just want to live here. They have made their lives here. They're married, have kids, and
Mexico?
Yes, I would. I mean, I'll have to admit I'm used to a certain standard of living that comes with the United States. But sometimes, though, I'll be honest, the standard of living means nothing because some of the things the fond memories I have of Mexico, and sometimes I have to be careful because I wonder if I idolize some of my youth, in the culture. But it's just every time I go back, it's just this sense of community. I mean, my family's not exactly rich and poverty, but yet how they come together and how they support each other. And I'm not saying that you don't find here, but I don't find it here as often as I wish we could. And it's not just within the family. I remember growing up down there, when the neighbor was sick, everybody pitched in. I mean, people made it their business to know each other. And we're here in the United States, I think we're very individualistic. People can literally not know their neighbors. And to me, I think that's what made me feel so disconnected here. And I miss that about Mexico. And I keep thinking that when I'm older, and you're at home, I want to be able to be with people. I want to be able to have that sense of belonging and, not be. And also it worries me because in the United States with older people, you put them in a home where, there's a totally mentality about how you treat the elders. Where in Mexico, I'm thinking, I want to be treated with respect. I want to be taken care of. I don't want to be put aside. So I do think about maybe once I retire or what have you, maybe medical stuff is not as like here, but I ditched the medical stuff over just for the sense of the community and still feeling like belonging.
Okay. So would you go back to Taiwan to live?
No, I don't think so. I'm just more used to it. There's obviously a lot more space in the United States. In Taiwan, it's pretty dense, a lot of high-rise buildings, a lot of people, a lot of pollution. And here it seems like geographically it's more diverse. And definitely the population itself is more diverse, and I like that better.
no, by no means. If I ever move from the United States, it's got to be to a different country, and it would have to be either Spain or an European country. I don't want to get a citizenship though.
Oh yeah, why not?
Because I don't see it necessary. I mean, I'm not even a resident yet, and I think I have chipped a lot.
Well, for me, I would have to say California. That's where my parents are, but I only go back there probably twice a year, so technically that's home. It's my permanent address, but I don't know if I can say anywhere is really home for me because I move around
Right now
a
it's
lot.
Bloomington, and it's been in Bloomington for the last 18 years.
Where's home? I don't know. I do consider Mexico my home, but but when I run into people here in Bloomington and they ask me where I'm from, I always say I'm from Chicago. I lived there for 10 years, so I'm from Chicago.
I really only know here. I don't remember very much about there. Growing up, I had a happy childhood, but I guess it wasn't really conscious adult living, so it's different. So I would say here,
So this is home?
this is home.
Bloomington home? Or
I'm an immigrant too because I came here with dreams and goals and not knowing the language and trying to survive in a whole different culture and country.